Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books here in Radha Lane, the library of the sannyasi quarters, right down the street or across the way, across the parking lot from Sri Sri Radha Nila Madhava's beautiful temple. We have a room full of spiritual seekers. We got a new guy on the block. His name is Michael. Comes from New York. He's only 28, but he's getting younger every day. And we're going to read Srimad-Bhagavatam. And before we do, we're going to read a prayer by Sanatana Goswami, who's senior disciple of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the elder brother of Rupa Goswami. They call us Rupanugas, followers of Rupa Goswami. So Rupa and Sanatana Goswamis were the senior and most elevated senior Goswamis of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. They were sent there by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to excavate the lost places of pilgrimage. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to Vrindavan 500 years ago, there was nothing. Well, there was something, but all of the places of pilgrimage, there were no temples. It's like the holy Dham had, disappeared, kind of. And he bathed in Radha Kund, which was a little paddy field out in the middle of nowhere, and discovered Radha Kund, Shyama Kund, and the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan went there, especially Sanatana and Rupa, and excavated, renovated, found all the different holy places by looking at scriptures and maps and old maps, and they did impossible things, and they wrote all kinds of transcendental literatures to corroborate Lord Chaitanya's teachings and according to the Vedas. So here we go. Srimad-Bhagavata Mahima Stotram by Sanatana Goswami. His glorification of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, which we're going to read tonight. And it goes like this. Sarva Shastabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja Sarva Lokaika Drik Prada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kali Dvandoditaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master, Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshaksharayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Mad Mahadana Mad Nistadaka Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu saduta dayin atini chochatakara hanamuncha gadachin mam premna ritkantayospuda. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So we've reached the fourth canto of the Srimad-Bhagavatam out of 12. Chapter 22. And we're going to begin with text 46. The four Kumaras four Kumaras, the original yogis and devotees actually, are speaking to Prthu Maharaj, an incarnation, an empowered incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, instructing him on how to organize human society and engage in real spiritual life. Text 46. The Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras eat their food by virtue of the Brahmana's mercy. It is the Brahmanas who enjoy their own property, clothe themselves with their own property, and give charity with their own property. We read that. So it was 47.
No, we didn't read that yesterday, but you explained that. Yeah.
Okay.
Really? I explained it, but we didn't read it?
Well, I'm sorry. You were saying the Brahmas.
I'm going in the right direction. Okay. If I can be so present. Okay. Keep me going, Uncle John. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is worshipped with the words yes, we did read this.
47.
47. We're going to skip to 47. There you go. Now, that's right, because, I stopped right there because Prthu Maharaj is now going to, Prthu Maharaj is actually speaking to the Kumaras after the Kumaras instructed him. That's what's actually happening. Yeah, thank you. Prthu Maharaj continued, how can such persons who have rendered unlimited service by explaining the path of self-realization in relation to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and whose explanations are given for our enlightenment with complete conviction and Vedic evidence, be repaid except by folded palms containing water for their satisfaction? Such great personalities can be satisfied only by their own activities, which are distributed amongst human society out of their unlimited mercy. Purport. Great personalities of the material world are very eager to render welfare service to human society, but actually no one can render better service than one who distributes the knowledge of spiritual realization in relation with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All living entities are within the clutches of the illusory energy. Forgetting their real identity, they hover in material existence, transmigrating from one body to another in search of a peaceful life. Since these living entities have very little knowledge of self-realization, they are not getting any relief, although they are very anxious to attain peace of mind and some substantial happiness. Saintly persons like the Kumaras, Narada, Prahlad, Janaka, Shukadev Goswami, and Kapila-dev, as well as the followers of such authorities as the Vaishnava Acharyas and their servants, can render a valuable service to humanity by disseminating knowledge of the relationship between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entity. Such knowledge is the perfect benediction for humanity. Knowledge of Krishna is such a great gift that it is impossible to repay the benefactor. Therefore, Prthu Maharaj requested the Kumaras to be satisfied by their own benevolent activities in delivering souls from the clutches of Maya. The king saw that there was no other way to satisfy them for their exalted activities. The word Vinoda Patram can be divided into two words, Vina and Udapatram, or can be understood as one word, Vinoda Patram, which means joker. A joker's activities simply arouse laughter, and a person who tries to repay the spiritual master or teacher of the transcendental message of Krishna becomes a laughingstock, just like a joker, because it is not possible to repay such a debt. The best friend and benefactor of all people is one who awakens humanity to its original Krishna consciousness. Text 48. The great sage Maitreya continued, being thus worshipped by Maharaj Prthu, the four Kumaras, who were masters of devotional service, became very pleased. Indeed, they appeared in the sky and praised the character of the king, and everyone observed them. Purport. It is said that the demigods never touch the surface of the earth. They walk and travel in space only. Like the great sage Narada, the Kumaras do not require any machine to travel in space. There are also residents of Siddhaloka who can travel in space without machines. Since they can go from one planet to another, they are called siddhas. That is to say, they have acquired all mystic and yogic powers. Such great saintly persons who have attained complete perfection in mystic yoga are not visible in this age on earth, because humanity is not worthy of their presence. The Kumaras, however, praised the characteristics of Maharaj Prthu and his great devotional attitude and humility. The Kumaras were greatly satisfied by King Prithu's method of worship. It was by the grace of Maharaj Prthu that the common citizens in his domain could see the Kumaras flying in outer space. Text 49. Amongst great personalities, Maharaj Prthu was the chief by virtue of his fixed position in relation to spiritual enlightenment. He remained satisfied as one who has achieved all success in spiritual understanding. Purport. Remaining fixed in devotional service gives one the utmost in self-satisfaction. Hey Carter. Hare Krishna. Remaining fixed in devotional service gives one the utmost in self-satisfaction. Actually, self-satisfaction can be achieved only by pure devotees who have no desire other than to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Give him a pillow for the book, somebody. Here you go. Since the Supreme Personality of Godhead has nothing to desire, he is fully satisfied with himself. Similarly, a devotee who has no desire other than to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead is as self-satisfied as the Supreme Lord. Everyone is hankering after peace of mind and self-satisfaction, but these can only be achieved by becoming a pure devotee of the Lord. King Prithu's statements in previous verses regarding his vast knowledge and perfect devotional service are justified here, for he is considered best among all Mahatmas. In Bhagavad Gita 9:13, Sri Krishna speaks of Mahatmas in this way: Mahatmanas tumam partha daivim prakritim ashritaha bhajantyananya manaso gyatva bhutadamavyayam. O son of Pritha, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead original, and inexhaustible. The Mahatmas are not under the clutches of the illusory energy, but are under the protection of the spiritual energy. Because of this, the real Mahatma is always engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. Prthu Maharaj exhibited all the symptoms of a Mahatma. Therefore he is mentioned in this verse as Duryo Mahatan, best of the Mahatmas. Text 50. Being self-satisfied, Maharaj Prthu executed his duties as perfectly as possible, according to the time and his situation, strength, and financial position. His only aim in all his activities was to satisfy the absolute truth. In this way, he duly acted. Purport. Maharaj Prthu was a responsible monarch. Maharaj Prthu was a responsible monarch, and he had to execute the duties of a Kshatriya, a king, and a devotee at the same time. Being perfect in the Lord's devotional service, he could execute his prescribed duties with complete perfection, as befitted the time and circumstance, and his financial strength and personal ability. In this regard, the word karmani in this verse is significant. Prthu Maharaja's activities were not ordinary, for they were in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Rupa Goswami has advised that things which are favorable to devotional service should not be rejected, nor should activity favorable for devotional service be considered ordinary work or fruitive activity. For example, an ordinary worker conducts business in order to earn money for his sense gratification. A devotee may perform the same work in exactly the same way, but his aim is to satisfy the Supreme Lord. Consequently, his activities are not ordinary. Prthu Maharaja's activities were therefore not ordinary, but were all spiritual and transcendental, for his aim was to satisfy the Lord. Just as Arjuna, who was a warrior, had to fight to satisfy Krishna, Prthu Maharaj performed his royal duties as king for the satisfaction of Krishna. Indeed, whatever he did as emperor of the whole world was perfectly befitting a pure devotee. It is therefore said by a Vaishnava poet, Vaishnavera kriya mudra bhigye na bujhaya. No one can understand the activities of a pure devotee. A pure devotee's activities may appear like ordinary activities, but behind them there is profound significance. The satisfaction of the Lord a pure devotee's activities may appear like ordinary activities, but behind them there is profound significance, the satisfaction of the Lord. In order to understand the activities of Vaishnava, one has to become a very expert. Maharaj Prthu did not allow himself to function outside the institution of 4 varnas and 4 ashramas. Although as a Vaishnava, he was a Paramahamsa, transcendental to all material activities. He remained at his position as a Kshatriya to rule the world, and at the same time remained transcendental to such activities by satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Concealing himself as a pure devotee, he externally manifested himself as a very powerful and dutiful king. In other words, none of his activities were carried out for his own sense gratification. Everything he did was meant for the satisfaction of the senses of the Lord. This is clearly explained in the next verse. Text 51. Maharaj Prthu completely dedicated himself to be an eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, transcendental to material nature. Consequently, all the fruits of his activities were dedicated to the Lord, and he always thought of himself as the servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the proprietor of everything. The life and dedication of Maharaj Prthu in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead serve as a good example of Karma Yoga. The term Karma Yoga is often used in Bhagavad Gita, and herein Maharaj Prthu is giving a practical example of what Karma Yoga actually is. The first requirement for the proper execution of Karma Yoga is given herein. Palam Brahmani Sanyasya, or Vinyasya. One must give the fruits of his activities to the Supreme Brahman, Para-Brahman, Krishna. By doing so, one actually situates himself in the renounced order of life, sannyas. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 18.2, giving up the fruits of one's activities to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is called sannyas. Kamyanam karmanam yasam sannyasam kavayo viduhu sarva karma palatyagam prahustyagam vichakshanaha. To give up the results of all activities is called renunciation, tyaga, by the wise. And that state is called the renounced order of life, sannyas, by great learned men. Although he was living as a householder, Prthu Maharaj was actually in the renounced order of life, sannyas. This will be clearer in the following verses. The word nirvishanga, uncontaminated, is very significant, because Maharaj Prthu was not attached to the result of his activities. In this material world, a person is always thinking of the proprietorship of everything he accumulates or works for. When the fruits of one's activities are rendered to the service of the Lord, one is actually practicing Karma Yoga. Anyone can practice Karma Yoga, but it is especially easy for the householder, who can install the deity of the Lord in the home and worship him according to the methods of Bhakti Yoga. This method includes 9 items: hearing, chanting, remembering, serving, worshipping the deity, praying, carrying out orders, serving Krishna as friend, and sacrificing everything for him. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. Bhagavatam 7:5-23. These methods of Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga are being broadcast all over the world by the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Anyone can learn these methods simply by following the examples of the members of the society. In one's home or in a temple, the deity is considered the proprietor of everything, and everyone is considered the deity's eternal servant. The Lord is transcendental, for he is not part of this material creation. The words Prakrite Param are used in this verse because everything within this material world is created by the external material energy of the Lord. But the Lord himself is not a creation of this material energy. The Lord is the supreme superintendent of all material creations, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 9.10. Maya jakshina prakriti suyate sacharacharam hetunan inikonteya jagat viparivartate. This material nature is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, producing all the moving and unmoving beings. And by its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. All material changes and material progress taking place by the wonderful interaction of matter are under the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Events in the material world are not taking place blindly. If one always remains a servant of Krishna and engages everything in his service, one is accepted as Jivan Mukta, a liberated soul, even during his lifetime within the material world. Generally, liberation takes place after one gives up this body, but one who lives according to the example of Prthu Maharaj is liberated even in this lifetime. In Krishna consciousness, the results of one's activities depend on the will of the Supreme Person. Indeed, in all cases, the result is not dependent on one's personal dexterity, but is completely dependent on the will of the Supreme. I'll read that again. That's too good. Indeed, in all cases, the result is not dependent on one's own personal dexterity, but is completely dependent on the will of the Supreme. This is the real significance of Palam Brahmani Sannyasya. A soul dedicated a soul dedicated to the service of the Lord should never think of himself as the personal proprietor or the superintendent. A dedicated devotee should prosecute his work according to the rules and regulations described in devotional service. The results of his activities are completely dependent on the supreme will of the Lord. Text 52. Maharaj Prthu, who was very opulent due to the prosperity of his entire empire, remained at home as a householder. Since he was never inclined to utilize his opulence for the gratification of his senses, he remained unattached, exactly like the sun, which is unaffected in all circumstances. Purport. The word griheshu is significant in this verse. Out of the 4 ashramas, the brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas, only the grihastha, or householder, is allowed to associate with women. Therefore, the grihastha ashram is a kind of license for sense gratification given to the devotee. Prthu Maharaj was special in that although he was given license to remain a householder, and although he possessed immense opulences in his kingdom, he never engaged in sense gratification. This was a special sign that indicated him to be a pure devotee of the Lord. A pure devotee is never attracted by sense gratification, and consequently, he is liberated. In material life, a person engages in sense gratification for his own personal satisfaction. But in the devotional or liberated life, one aims to satisfy the senses of the Lord. In this verse, Maharaj Prthu is likened to the sun, Arkavat. Sometimes the sun shines on stool, urine, and so many other polluted things. But since the sun is all-powerful, it is never affected by the polluted things with which it associates. On the contrary, the sunshine sterilizes and purifies his polluted and dirty places. Similarly, a devotee may engage in so many material activities, but because he has no desire for sense gratification, they never affect him. On the contrary, he dovetails all material activities for the service of the Lord. Since a pure devotee knows how to utilize everything for the Lord's service, he is never affected by material activities. Instead, by his transcendental plans, he purifies such activities. This is described in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Sarvopadi vinir muktam tat padat vena nirmalam. His aim is to become completely purified in the service of the Lord without being affected by material designations. Text 53. Being situated in the liberated position of devotional service, Prthu Maharaj not only performed all fruitive activities, but also begot 5 sons by his wife, Archie. Indeed, all his sons were begotten according to his own desire. Purport. As a householder, Prthu Maharaj had 5 sons by his wife, Archie, and all these sons were begotten as he desired them. They were not born whimsically or by accident. How one can beget children according to one's own desire is practically unknown in the present age, Kali Yuga. In this regard, the secret of success depends on the parents' acceptance of the various purificatory methods known as sanskaras. The first sanskara, the garbhadana sanskara, or child-begetting sanskara, is compulsory, especially for the higher castes, the brahmanas and kshatriyas. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, sex life, which is not against religious principles, is Krishna himself. And according to religious principles, when one wants to beget a child, he must perform the garbhadana sanskara before having sex. The mental state of the father and mother before sex will certainly affect the mentality of the child to be begotten. A child who is begotten out of lust may not turn out as the parents desire. As stated in the Shastras, yata yonir yata bijam. Yata yoni indicates the mother, and yata bijam indicates the father. And if the mental state of the parents is prepared before they have sex, the child which they will beget will certainly reflect their mental condition. It is therefore understood by the word Atma Samatan that both Prthu Maharaj and Archie underwent the Garbhadana purificatory process before begetting children, and thus they begot all their sons according to their desires in purified mental states. Prthu Maharaj did not beget his children out of lust, nor was he attracted to his wife for sense gratificatory purposes. He begot the children as a grihastha for the future administration of his government all over the world. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Text 54. After begetting 5 sons, named Vijitashva, Dhumrakesha, Hayaksha, Dravina, and Vrika, Prthu Maharaj continued to rule the planet. He accepted all the qualities of the deities who governed all other planets. Purport. In each and every planet there is a predominating deity. It is understood from Bhagavad Gita that in the sun there is a predominating deity named Vivaswan. Similarly, there is a predominating deity of the moon and of the various planets. Actually, the predominating deities in all the other planets are descendants from the predominating deities of the sun and moon. On this planet Earth, there are two Kshatriya dynasties, and one comes from the predominating deity of the sun, and the other from the predominating deity of the moon. These dynasties are called the Surya Vangsha and Chandra Vangsha, respectively. When monarchy existed on this planet, the chief member was one of the members of the Surya dynasty, or Surya Vangsha, and the subordinate kings belonged to the Chandra Vangsha. However, Maharaj Prthu was so powerful that he could exhibit all the qualities of the predominating deities in other planets. In the modern age, people from Earth have tried to go to the moon, but they have not been able to find anyone there. What to speak of meeting the moon's predominating deity? The Vedic literature, however, repeatedly informs us that the moon is full of highly elevated inhabitants who are counted amongst the demigods. We are therefore always in doubt about what kind of moon adventure the modern scientists of this planet Earth have undertaken. Hare Krishna. Text 55. Since Maharaj Prthu was a perfect devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he wanted to protect the Lord's creation by pleasing the various citizens according to their various desires. Therefore, Prthu Maharaj used to please them in all respects by his words, mentality, works, and gentle behavior. Purport. As will be explained in the next verse, Prthu Maharaj used to please all kinds of citizens by his extraordinary capacity to understand the mentality of others. Indeed, his dealings were so perfect that every one of the citizens was very much satisfied and lived in complete peace. The word Achyutatmaka is significant in this verse, for Maharaj Prthu used to rule this planet as a representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He knew that he was the representative of the Lord, and that the Lord's creation must be protected intelligently. Atheists cannot understand the purpose behind the creation. Although this material world is condemned when it is compared to the spiritual world, there is still some purpose behind it. Modern scientists and philosophers cannot understand that purpose, nor do they believe in the existence of a creator. They try to establish everything by their so-called scientific research, but they do not center anything around the Supreme Creator. A devotee, however, can understand the purpose of creation, which is to give facilities to the individual living entities who want to lord it over material nature. The ruler of this planet should therefore know that all the inhabitants, especially human beings, have come to this material world for sense enjoyment. It is therefore the duty of the ruler to satisfy them in their sense enjoyment, as well as to elevate them to Krishna consciousness, so that they can all ultimately return home back to Godhead. With this in mind, with this idea in mind, the king or government head, with this idea in mind, the king or government head should rule the world. In this way, everyone will be satisfied. How can this be accomplished? There are many examples, like Prthu Maharaj, and the history of his regency on this planet is elaborately described in Srimad-Bhagavatam. Even in this fallen age, if the rulers, governors, and presidents take advantage of Prthu Maharaj's example, there will certainly be a reign of peace and prosperity throughout the world. Text 56. Maharaj Prthu became a celebrated king as Somaraja, the king of the moon. He was so powerful and exacting, just like the sun god, who distributes heat and light, and at the same time exacts all the planetary waters. Purport. In this verse, Prthu Maharaj is compared to the kings of the moon and the sun. The king of the moon and the king of the sun serve as examples of how the Lord desires the universe to be ruled. The sun distributes heat and light, and at the same time exacts water from all planets. The moon is very pleasing at night, and when one becomes fatigued after a day's labor in the sun, he can enjoy the moonshine. Like the sun god, Prthu Maharaj distributed his heat and light to give protection to his kingdom, for without heat and light, no one can exist. Similarly, Prthu Maharaj exacted taxes and gave such strong orders to the citizens and government that no one had the power to disobey him. On the other hand, he pleased everyone, just like the moonshine. Both the sun and the moon have particular influences by which they maintain order in the universe. The modern scientists and philosophers should become familiar with the Supreme Lord's perfect plan for universal maintenance. Text 57. Maharaj Prthu was so strong and powerful that no one could disobey his orders any more than one could conquer fire itself. He was so strong that he was compared to Indra, the king of heaven, whose power is insuperable. On the other hand, Maharaj Prthu was also as tolerant as the earth, and in fulfilling various desires of human society, he was like heaven itself. Purport. It is the duty of a king to give protection to the citizens and to fulfill their desires. At the same time, the citizens must obey the laws of the state. Maharaj Prthu maintained all the standards of good government, and he was so invincible that no one could disobey his orders any more than a person could stop heat and light emanating from a fire. He was so strong and powerful that he was compared to the king of heaven, Indra. In this age, modern scientists have been experimenting with nuclear weapons, and in a former age, they used to release brahmastras. But all these brahmastras and nuclear weapons are insignificant compared to the thunderbolt of the King of Heaven. When Indra releases a thunderbolt, even the biggest hills and mountains crack. On the other hand, Maharaj Prthu was as tolerant as the earth itself, and he fulfilled all the desires of his citizens, just like torrents of rain from the sky. Without rainfall, it is not possible to fulfill one's various desires on this planet. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 3:14, Parjanyat Anasambhavat. Food grains are produced only because rain falls from the sky, and without grains, no one on the earth can be satisfied. Consequently, an unlimited distribution of mercy is compared to the water falling from the clouds. Maharaj Prthu distributed his mercy incessantly, much like rainfall. In other words, Maharaj Prthu was softer than a rose. Maharaj Prthu was softer than a rose flower and harder than a thunderbolt. In this way, he ruled over his kingdom. Text 58. Just as rainfall satisfies everyone's desires, Maharaj Prthu used to satisfy everyone. He was like the sea in that no one could understand his depths, and he was like Meru, the king of hills, in the fixity of his purpose. Purport. Maharaj Prthu used to distribute his mercy to suffering humanity, and it was like rainfall after excessive heat. The ocean is wide and expansive, and it is very difficult to measure its length and breadth. Similarly, Prthu Maharaj was so deep and grave that no one can fathom his purpose. The hill known as Meru is fixed in the universe as a universal pivot, and no one can move it an inch from its position. Similarly, no one could ever dissuade Maharaj Prthu when he was determined. Text 59. Maharaj Prithu's intelligence and education were exactly like that of Yamaraj, the superintendent of death. His opulence was comparable to the Himalaya mountains, where all valuable jewels and metals are stocked. He possessed great riches like Kumara, the treasurer of the heavenly planets, and no one could reveal his secrets, for they were like the demigod Varunas. Purport. Yamaraj, or Dharmaraj, as the superintendent of death, has to judge the criminal living entities who have committed sinful activities throughout their lives. Consequently, Yamaraj is expected to be most expert in judicial matters. Consequently, Prthu Maharaj was also highly learned and exceedingly exact in delivering his judgment upon the citizens. No one could excel him in opulence any more than estimate the stock of minerals and jewels in the Himalaya mountains. Therefore he is compared to Kumara, the treasurer of the heavenly planets. Nor could anyone discover the secrets of his life any more than learn the secrets of Varuna, the demigod presiding over the water, the night, and the western sky. Varuna is omniscient, and since he punishes his sins, he is prayed to for forgiveness. He is also the sender of disease, and is often associated with Mitra and Indra. Text 60. In his bodily strength and in the strength of his senses, Maharaj Prthu was as strong as the wind, which can go anywhere and everywhere. As far as his intolerance was concerned, he was just like the all-powerful Rudra expansion, or Lord Shiva, or Sadashiva. Text 61. In his bodily beauty, he was just like Cupid, and in his thoughtfulness, he was like a lion. In his affection, he was just like Swayambhuva Manu, and in his ability to control, he was like Lord Brahma. Text 62. In his personal behavior, Maharaj Prthu exhibited all good qualities, and in spiritual knowledge he was exactly like Brihaspati. In self-control, he was like the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. As far as his devotional service was concerned, he was a great follower of devotees who were attached to cow protection and the rendering of all service to the spiritual master and the brahmanas. He was perfect in his shyness and in his gentle behavior, and when he engaged in some philanthropic activity, he worked as if he were working for his own personal self. Purport. When Lord Chaitanya talked to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, the Lord honored him as the incarnation of Brihaspati. Brihaspati is the chief priest of the heavenly kingdom, and he is a follower of the philosophy known as Brahmavad or Mayavad. Brihaspati is also a great logician. It appears from this statement that Maharaj Prthu, although a great devotee, constantly engaged in the loving service of the Lord, could defeat all kinds of impersonalists and Mayavadis by his profound knowledge of Vedic scriptures. We should learn from Maharaj Prthu that a Vaishnava or devotee must not only be fixed in the service of the Lord, but, if required, must be prepared to argue with the impersonalist Mayavadis with all logic and philosophy, and defeat their contention that the absolute truth is impersonal. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ideal self-controller or brahmachari. When Krishna was elected to be president of the Rajasuya Yajna performed by Maharaj Yudhishthir, grandfather Bhishmadev praised Lord Krishna as the greatest brahmachari. Because grandfather Bhishmadev was a brahmachari, he was quite fit to distinguish a brahmachari from a vyabhichari. Although Prthu Maharaj was a householder and father of 5 children, he was still considered to be most controlled. One who begets Krishna-conscious children for the benefit of humanity is actually a brahmachari. One who simply begets children like cats and dogs is not a proper father. The word brahmachari also refers to one who acts on the platform of Brahman, or devotional service. In the impersonal Brahman conception, there is no activity, yet when one performs activities in connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is to be known as brahmachari. Thus, Prthu Maharaj was an ideal brahmachari and grihastha simultaneously. Vishwaksena Nivartishu refers to devotees who are constantly engaged in the service of the Lord. Other devotees must follow in their footsteps. Srila Narottam Das Thakur said, "Eight Chaya Goshayara Moitaradas." He is prepared to become the disciple of anyone who follows in the footsteps of the 6 Goswamis. Also, like all Vaishnavas, Maharaj Prthu was devoted to cow protection, spiritual masters, and qualified brahmanas. Prthu Maharaj was also very humble and meek and gentle, and whenever he performed any philanthropic work or welfare activity for the general public, he would labor exactly as if he were tending to his own personal necessities. In other words, his philanthropic activities were not for the sake of show, but were performed out of personal feeling and commitment. All philanthropic activities should be thus performed. Nice. Lessons for everyone. What is the real standard of human life? How we're supposed to feel, think and feel and will and act. Text 63. Throughout the whole universe, in the higher, lower and middle planetary systems, Prthu Maharaj's reputation was loudly declared, and all ladies and saintly persons heard his glories, which were as sweet as the glories of Lord Ramachandra. Purport. In this verse, the words Srinam and Rama are significant. It is the practice amongst ladies to hear and enjoy the praises of certain heroes. From this verse it appears that Prthu Maharaja's reputation was so great that ladies all over the universe would hear of it with great pleasure. At the same time, his glories were heard all over the universe by the devotees, and they were as pleasing as Lord Ramachandra's glories. Lord Ramachandra's kingdom is still existing, and recently there was a political party in India named the Ram Rajya Party, which wanted to establish a kingdom resembling the kingdom of Rama. Unfortunately, modern politicians want the kingdom of Rama without Rama himself. Although they have banished the idea of God consciousness, they still expect to establish the kingdom of Rama. Such a proposal is rejected by devotees. Prthu Maharaja's reputation was heard by saintly persons because he exactly represented Lord Ramachandra, the ideal king. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 4th chapter, 4th canto, 22nd chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam, entitled Prthu Maharaja's meeting with the 4 Kumaras. And another act of the history of the universe is completed on this day. 18th of February, 2019. Hare Krishna. So, there's lots and lots of wonderful points being made in this reading, dealing with moral and spiritual principles that have been so lost they sound like phantasmagoria or something like mythological or something. How is it possible that there could be personalities like this and principles being followed on this earth planet right the way it's going right now? But it's possible, and at least as individual persons or as groups of devotees, it is our duty to follow in the footsteps of these great acharyas and kings and saintly persons. And it is possible if we just hear with faith and love and without argument. But without argument doesn't mean blindly. So in the 3rd canto, we already read this not that long ago. This is the 4th canto. We read the 3rd canto not long ago. We've been doing this every day for a long time, reading every day these books. Yep. And there it is described by Kapiladeva, who was another incarnation of Krishna, but he was specializing in explaining the details of the creation of the universe, the relationship of all the energies that interact, and the souls, us conditioned souls who are here trying to sort it out, figure out what's going on. And in that description, when it came to the creation of intelligence, the universe is like a big machine. Just like this body is a very complicated machine. The universe is a really big machine. And all the parts of the machine are created, and then it's put together by a certain arrangement of transformations of energies directed by Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when it came to the creation of intelligence, there's a verse that describes the original functions, intentions of the Lord in relationship to intelligence. And it's described there that there's 5 basic qualities of intelligence, functions. And the first one is someone, come on. Someone knows this. The first, we said this just a few weeks ago. Thank you very much. Very good. Well done. Doubt. Correct apprehension. misapprehension, memory, and sleep. These are the functions of intelligence. So if one has intelligence, then the tendency is to doubt something that is unknown when it comes in front of the person. And if one doesn't doubt in the beginning, then he's not exhibiting intelligence. This may be the only scripture in the world which is encouraging people to doubt in the beginning. Yeah. And it gives us the ability to actually accept things without blind faith, but at the same time using the constructive nature of intelligence to guide us in what is actually good for us and what is not good for us. And of course, without spiritual guidance, we have to kind of learn that by, trial and error, so to speak. But if we have intelligence, when we come up against something or someone or some event or some knowledge or whatever that is not good for us, in other words, is causing us disturbance, anxiety, agitation, and debilitating our faith in God, then we should know, oh, I don't think so, I'll go another way. And if we keep doing that, then the intelligence is, the doubt that comes from intelligence is constructive, guides us constructively. But when we come upon a source of knowledge which is actually authoritative, in other words, coming from the supreme authority, and we continue to doubt, not that we can't question, but when we get the answers and it satisfies our intelligence, every question, then if we're really intelligent, then we'll give up that constructive doubting. Or not constructive, we won't give up constructive doubting, but we'll give up the destructive doubting that comes from unnecessarily challenging or doubting a real authority. In the Bible it's called doubting Thomas. It's the same idea. So, there you have it. That's the purpose of the Bhagavatam. To teach us all these things. And to teach us to be able to move through the life in such a way as to when we come to the end of this life, which, in case we didn't notice, it's going to happen to everybody, every single person, even though we can't think of it when we're young. It's a little inconceivable, but it's true. Nonetheless, every single one of us is going to leave our body. And what to do at that moment is not being taught. It's not being taught by any authorities, practically. Even religious authorities, they don't know what to do. It's your last day. Okay, we'll give you anything you want then. Right? There was a famous religionist, I won't mention the name, set up in Calcutta and became a very famous spiritualist and great philanthropist of the highest order. And they ran these philanthropic places, and when the persons were poor people, and when they were about to die, their philosophy was, we'll just give them anything. Whatever they get, have meat, have alcohol, have whatever. And that was their idea of, and they became famous for great, because everyone in the material world is thinking, hey, that's what we need to do, is get something we want at the end of life, and that's it. There's no other purpose. But the purpose of human life, as we heard, is not that, just to enjoy the senses whimsically. The purpose is to find out who we are and where we belong eternally and go there. Hare Krishna. So that was my reflection. Now, the ball is in your court. Anybody, here it is. Wait, you've got one? Michael's got one? I bet you've got a few. Here. Hey, Sarva. Oh, it's okay. It's all right. It's all right. Shoot.
I am reading from text. I'm reading from text 55 in the purport, and something that was very interesting for me was it said, "The ruler of this planet should therefore know that all the inhabitants, especially human beings, have come to this material world for sense enjoyment. It is therefore the duty of the ruler to satisfy them in their sense enjoyment, as well as to elevate them to Krishna consciousness so that they can ultimately return home back to the Godhead." The latter part of that you just commented on, and I was a little bit curious if you could elaborate. What is sense enjoyment?
Okay, first of all, what do you mean by senses? What does it mean by senses? What's your idea? What are the senses?
I mean, in a sixth grade biology term, I would say sight, sound, touch,
Taste,
taste,
feeling. Yes, touch. You got.
all right, feet,
Yeah.
light,
Yeah. Smell. Yeah. Then there's also,
what exactly does it mean, sense enjoyment?
well, to satisfy those senses. You know, the situation is this. We are spiritual beings,
Mm-hmm.
and we have spiritual senses.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in this material world because we've wanted to enjoy the senses without Krishna, without being responsible, or without being responsible to anyone, to any authority. We want to be free. We want to live freely.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, the material nature, under the direction of Krishna, he's like a very loving father who gives to a son or a child who is really intensely desirous of having something, even though sometimes it may not be so necessarily good for them. You know, a BB gun or something when you're a 5-year-old, you know, you're going to put out somebody's eye or break a window or something like that. But if the child is really insistent, you know, and crying and on the floor, beating the floor with the hands and legs, and he goes, "Oh, all right," because he loves the kid, and he doesn't want the. So like that, Krishna he loves us unconditionally, and therefore, you know, when soul desires to find out what it's like to be free, or to be free like Krishna, because Krishna is completely free, and we have a little tiny, infinitesimal ability to be free. Krishna has unlimited ability to be free, and we're parts and parcels of God or Krishna. So therefore we have this little infinitesimal ability to be free, to be independent. And when we use it, and when you have freedom, you automatically have the ability to use it properly or to misuse it. That's what freedom means, right? Love couldn't exist without this concept, without this truth. You can't force somebody to love you. Love is voluntary. So Krishna loves us unconditionally, and therefore when we want to misuse our senses for sense enjoyment, rather than for satisfying the senses of the Lord, then we come to the material world. And that's what sense enjoyment is. It's trying to enjoy the senses independent of Krishna, independent of the senses of God. Now we have three sets of senses. We have the gross material senses, which are obvious, you know, the hands and the legs and the feet. And we have knowledge acquiring senses, and we have active senses. All knowledge acquiring senses you've already given them. You know, nose, eyes, ears, tongue, nose, skin. These are the knowledge acquiring senses. We get information from outside into the soul through the knowledge acquiring sense. And then there's the active senses, the hands, the legs, the genitals, the anus, you know, These are the active senses. So then we have subtle senses. You dream at night? Yeah. Well, when you dream at night, you're laying in the bed, unless you're a night walker. But most people, when they dream, they're still in the bed. I had a friend when I was growing up who did that. He walked in his sleep. He would walk down the stairs while he was dreaming and talk to you. He was a pretty Clint was his name. Yeah. Anyway, normally when we dream, we're in the bed, and we see ourselves flying through the sky, or running from a tiger, or losing all our things at the airport, or trying to get to the airport and, oh, I forgot all my bags. Oh no, now what's going to happen? And then we wake up. You know, sweat, covered with sweat, anxiety. Now what's going to happen? My whole life is... And then we wake up. Oh, what a relief. I didn't actually lose everything. I didn't miss the plane and all those things. Or I was flying. It was so nice. I was just about to become the king. Anyway. So those senses that we see and feel and all those things we do, they're the subtle senses. And the subtle body, which is made of mind, intelligence, and false ego. False ego means the ego that tells us that we are the body. There's a real ego, and that brings us to the spiritual senses. The material elements, whether they be subtle or gross, are inert. They can't move without the interaction with consciousness. This is as the scientists call it, the mind-body problem. They think the mind is consciousness, but it's not. Consciousness is beyond the mind. Therefore, when we become exhilarated in the dream, and then come back to this body, and we forget it altogether, and then we become exhilarated in this body, the person who is actually feeling that exhilaration is neither the subtle body or the gross body, because the gross body and the subtle body are inert. The chemicals are inert. There's no combination of chemicals that can create consciousness.
And that's
Yeah. So the consciousness is coming from the soul, or is the soul. And the senses of the soul, which are very, very, the soul is atomized when we come to the material world, and we see and taste and feel all those things. Actually, we're the ones that are experiencing those sensations through the spiritual senses. But we're misidentifying ourselves to be matter. That's a sense enjoyment. That's what is meant by sense enjoyment in this purport. Which is real enjoyment. And that real enjoyment comes when we utilize the senses that we've been given. Whether we're in the spiritual world or material world, we use our senses for the satisfaction of the master of the senses, or the actual proprietor, creator of the senses, the real enjoyer. Our natural position, either in the spiritual or in the material worlds, is to be the servant. Think about it. Can you just think about, are there any living beings which are not rendering service somehow or other to other living beings? Even in the ecosystem of the universe, all living beings have some function to serve other living beings or serve the ecosystem in some way or another. So that's our natural situation, is to serve. So either we're forced to serve in the material world, or we have the option to voluntarily serve God in the spiritual world. And if we do that, then that sense gratification, which is commonly called lust, not just sex, but just we're overwhelmed by the attraction to the material energy and the interaction with our senses to enjoy. That's called lust. Yes. And love means eternal enjoyment, eternal satisfaction, eternal enjoyment of the senses. That's what we're looking for. That's why everybody's writing all these words to songs. Love, love, love. Talking about all you need is love. Dun, da, 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 da. And on and on and on and on. It's been going on forever. But the difference between this material world and the spiritual world is that the forms here change. But the forms in the spiritual world don't. And that's what we're looking for. All we can do is make cartoons where the trees can talk and things happen in different ways than they do normally. But to get these ideas, these thoughts, and these creative ideas, they're all coming from the actual spiritual experience that we had in the spiritual world that we can't remember now due to our presence with and identification with this material energy, subtle and gross. Does that throw some light on the subject? Something?
You went beyond.
Something.
I enjoyed it.
Oh, good. We're headed in the right direction.
Yeah.
Oh, good. So the question is how to get there. The question is how to find out who we are, how to actually taste a level of satisfaction which is not temporary, which is not illusory. Here in the material world, we're struggling, every one of us. We're not free. We think we're free, we want to be free, but we're not. How do we know? Because you got to get old. And just ask me, I'm old. Well, relatively old. Don't want to get old, don't want to have the pains, don't want to have whatever, don't want to die.
Really?
Oh, nobody wants to die. Not
Really?
really. Oh yes, that's why if I say, okay, you're not afraid to die, here. Let me take this knife. No.
Well, the knife is a little bit extreme.
Anyway,
May a comment plus after this pass away? Alright, I don't want to take away from everybody else. I guess.
it's your day in the sun. Go ahead.
That's nice. I guess there are a couple things. I guess I'll just get it out, and then you'll be able to comment the best that you can. I guess for me, I'm so appreciative of being here on Earth, and there is just I just see so much beauty around me, and I really feel as if there are just two ways to look at life. That you can either just see the beauty all around you, or you can see all the negativity. And it's just been such a beautiful, lifelong effort on my part, just to see all this beauty and everything. And it's really just a choice. And once you do that, it just, you just feel so light, and every day just feels like
But then what happens when you die?
But this is what I'm saying. I guess for me,
What happens when you die?
I'm just going to go home. I'm going to go to a new place, and I'm so excited about that.
Yes,
But I'm
but
also so grateful for also being here, because there's so many riches and beauties here as well.
those beauties, the difference is that those beauties are temporary. And we actually want.
But that's okay. If I meet somebody...
No, it's not all right.
Why not?
No, it's not all right. It's not what we want.
No.
If I was to tell you that you could enjoy forever, wouldn't you? No. If we put you in a room, what is the most extreme form of punishment in a penitentiary? Solitary confinement. That's right. We don't want to be alone. We don't want to be in the same place.
Conversely, I feel so connected.
In solitary confinement?
I may have lost this. How do you say that? I only know the Italian word. How do you say that in English?
Paradox.
No. When you compare two things to each other. Solitary confinement is life here on Earth, are you saying?
No, we're saying that the beauty is there, and we appreciate it also.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that we don't appreciate the beauty of God's creation, but we appreciate the Creator also. But we don't know who God is.
I think God
It's
is all
like
of us
it's like.
together.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you making the sun come up? What is the definition of God or the Supreme Controller?
Everything together.
No, the Supreme Controller and Creator is causing the sun to move, etc., 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 etc. But we're not doing that. If you think that you're doing that, then you're insane.
Well, I mean,
And some people who are insane, they think they're having a really good time. There's different places where you can go and you can meet people who are having a really good time. They think they're having a really good time. What we're trying to say to you is, like I said before, that this present incarnation or this present life in this body is temporary. But the soul is not temporary. The soul doesn't want temporary existence. No one, no soul. The ant, the living being in the ant, you put your finger over the ant and it'll go woo. Any living being, every living being. See, the thing is, the soul is made up of three, or the body of the soul and the soul are the same. Here we're embodied. We're a soul embodied in a material, subtle and gross body. And when we die, or when we pass on to the next place, then this body goes back into the material nature. It becomes dust or ashes or the stool of an animal or something. So the nature of material existence is illusory. It's temporary, it's illusory. Like when you look out into a desert, you'll see a vast body of water sometimes by the reflection of the sun on the sand. And an animal will be there in an oasis, a little pile of water, which is enough to keep him alive but he looks out and he sees this vast body of water. He says, "What am I doing here? There's a lot of water." So he goes out into this desert looking for it. But he goes, and then farther he goes, the water is further ahead of him, and it keeps going further ahead of him, and he runs out into the desert, and then he dies. Why do we lament when people die?
I don't.
Well,
and it's a little awkward too.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people think I should be more emotional about it.
Well, you don't look anybody that's lacking emotion. You look like a pretty emotional guy. So maybe you don't really know what love is. When you love someone and you lose them, then you feel separation, you feel bad. That's why everyone laments when father and mother, or wife or children or loved ones, or whatever, even a very elevated person may feel bad when people they don't know die. Why? Because they don't want to die. Because the soul is made of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Sat, Chit, Ananda. These are the Sanskrit terms.
Mm-hmm.
The form of the soul and the form of God are both made of Sat, Chit, Ananda. Vigraha means form. Therefore, when the consciousness is inside the body, which is inert, then we get a sensation that of eternity during the time that we're here. We get a sensation of enjoyment when we're doing something that stimulates our senses. We want to know everything. That's what the internet's all about. Combined desire of everyone to want to know everything. These are the symptoms of the soul. But in the spiritual world, we have full knowledge, and we have eternal life, and we have eternal pleasure. And that's what we're looking for. So if you're looking for it in the material world, you're looking in the wrong place. So you can say, well, that doesn't make any difference. I'm eternal. I'm going to be in the body of a dog next lifetime because I'm acting like a dog, but it doesn't make any difference because I'm going to forget about what I was anyway. So what difference does it make? That's called Maya in Sanskrit language, or illusion. So the spiritual master, the scriptures, the saintly persons teach us how to become free from that illusory experience and experience real life and real pleasure, real sense enjoyment, real happiness eternally. And the beginning of it is to practice being eternal even when we're not. That's called bhakti yoga. You've heard of the word yoga? You must have. Maybe? You've never heard of yoga?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by the word yoga, but I mean there's yoga, a series of stretches that people can do and body positioning.
Yeah, but they're all, yoga means to connect. In the Hindi language, the word yoga means to add. If you go to school in India, you're a little kid, they teach you how to add. Yoga means to add one and one together. That's yoga. So yoga means to connect. Yoke. When they put the two bullocks together, what puts them together is called the yoke. It means to add, to connect. So yoga means the soul wants to unite. It wants to connect with the Supreme, with the source of its existence, the source of the creation. That's what yoga means. And when we know about the Supreme, or we want to know about the Supreme, and we're still attached to the fruits of our work, and we connect the fruits of our work by yoga, then that's called karma yoga. When we're into mental activity and understanding things and enjoying things with the mind, then and we still have some idea of the Supreme, and we take the process of jnana yoga. We're called jnana yogi. And when we're into perfection, we're into mystic perfection, and at the same time we have appreciation that there must be some Supreme, then we engage in what is called Ashtanga yoga, of which those stretches you're talking about are the first stage of it. There's a whole process that goes beyond that, which teaches us how to find out who we are inside the body. And then bhakti yoga means we're no longer trying to enjoy the body or the mind or the mystic power, and we are just interested in connecting with the Supreme purely, without personal desire, that is called bhakti yoga. That's what we're into. There's more to it than that, but I got to stop now because I got to get up at 2 o'clock to go and record these books for audio books. Yeah, we're making audio books out of these books. Okay, Michael, it's been a pleasure, and I hope that we get to talk to you again. I hope this isn't the last time we get to talk. Hare Krishna. Hare Bol. Glory to Prabhupada. All right, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow night, the same time, same station, here in Radha Lane. And thank you very much for coming, and thank you very much for joining us and in this journey back home, back to Godhead. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Prthu Maharaj ki jai. Four Kumaras ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Thank you very